Hi, I'm Nicholson Johannes, and this is February Fury in Grand Blanc, Michigan, a presentation for Technical Communications 2. So first, I want to start off my presentation by giving an overview of what happened, the event, and I'm just going to lay it all out. So like first I'll talk about the setting, where it happened, what time, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the people that were involved and how they were affected, and then a little bit more about the areas, all the other areas that were affected. And then finally, I'll touch on what can we learn from this event? Like what what can we do in the face of a disaster like this to come together as a community? So what happened and where? In Grand Blanc, Michigan, on February 28th, an F2 tornado rolled through and traveled 5.7 miles of just a straight path of destruction across the city of Grand Blanc. First, the tornado touched down in Bicentennial Park, where thankfully there were not many structures, but a pavilion was damaged and some trees were uprooted. But as it left the park and started heading towards town, it crossed over the industrial section and it hit the WGS Global Service Building, which is a warehouse where just many different things are stored and shipped off and like that. And you can see from the picture on the right-hand side that it is almost completely destroyed. Siding's all ripped off, all the contents inside the building are all over the place, and it's just a complete disaster. And then lastly, after the warehouse was hit, the tornado picked up and moved towards the Indian Hill subdivision. And in the subdivision, there was further damage, down some down power lines, more trees were uprooted, and gas lines were uprooted because of trees coming up, and a lot of damaged houses from trees falling on them. So some of the residents inside the neighborhood commented on the damage, and one of them, Tyler Moncrief, said his alert system went off, and within 2 minutes the tornado was there. Just showing how quickly it can happen. You never think that it can happen that fast, and then boom, next thing you know, disaster strikes. Chris Utter was another resident in Indian Hill, and he said that it was sounded like a train was rolling through. So you can imagine that high winds just roaring through in the middle of the night just must have been terrible to live through. And then he even had a trampoline that ended up on top of his roof. So just the strong winds picking up trampolines and ripping down trees all through the neighborhood. And ultimately, after six houses had to be evacuated due to gas lines being broken. Um, so some of the first responders was Grand Blanc Fire Chief Don Schreiber, and he was quoted saying, "In February, we expect snow, not tornadoes. So just an unexpected time of year for this to happen. You're not expecting tornado in the middle of winter. You're expecting, heavy snow. And that's just one of the side effects here that we're seeing from all these uncommon weather patterns. And Michigan State police officials said that no serious injuries were reported. So thankfully, nobody was actually hurt, but which is surprising with all the damage that was done. So what can we learn from this? We need to learn that we always need to be prepared for emergencies. You never know when they're going to happen, especially now. Global warming is causing uncommon weather patterns everywhere in the world. We're seeing tsunamis and, hurricanes, and they're just destructive everywhere. So you never know when it could happen to you. And with it happening more and more all over the world, we need to be more prepared for when things can happen. And that comes with always having a plan. If you have a plan, you can mitigate some of the damage. You got to have a place that you can go to, have backup shelter, or even have like food stocked up that you could have in case of an emergency. And lastly, when disaster hits, we need to come together as a community. We need to help those that have been affected by this. You can't just leave your fellow neighbors to suffer when they're hurt and you're okay. So here you can see a picture of a man helping pick up his community after it all happened. So we need to come together and we always need to be prepared. And here's my works cited. Thank you very much. That was the end of my presentation. Here are some reflective questions, though. So what was the most difficult part about completing this project? I would say that taking all the information and piecing it all together in a nice timeline that the audience could follow along with. You know, it's a small community that not many people know about, so you got to kind of give a good background of where it's at and how it hit the town, and well, just kind of piece it together and make it work. And then I approached this presentation differently from project one. I was a lot more careful with my time limit. I rehearsed several times before I started recording to make sure that I fell within that 5 minute time limit range. And I made sure that my slides this time were well balanced and all the information was really nice and distributed across them. So that way I wasn't spending too much time on one particular slide. All right. Thank you.